Hey everyone, Mike here, welcome back to my channel. Please subscribe, check out some of my other videos. This is a video about the new Suicide Squad movie. In the past, I did a video of Birds of Prey, kind of the pre-movie to this movie, but I wanted to talk about today this new Suicide Squad movie in the sense that it's getting a lot of positive reviews and people seem to really like it, particularly in comparison to the 2016 Suicide Squad movie, which was kind of mixed in its reception. But I kind of want to talk about how this movie probably isn't actually as good as you think it is or want it to be. So let's talk about it right now. As I mentioned earlier, I'd love for you to check out some of my other videos. I do all kinds of pop culture videos like TV, movies, games, music, and etc. I'm also just about to get up to 1,300 subscribers, so please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and check out my stuff. Okay, so back in 2016, we get this movie Suicide Squad, which introduces us to this sort of ragtag group of misfit criminals in the DC superhero universe. And this movie is like not exactly linked in with the DC extended universe, which is now like not even really a thing as far as I can tell, but it kind of is like, you know, another part of what DC is trying to do to rival Marvel. And up until this point in 2016, DC, like now, has struggled to make any traction in this extended universe kind of world, particularly in comparison to Marvel, who blew it out of the park. DC came to the party so late, and I feel like we're scrambling to try and replicate the success so much. And Marvel had such a great success with the Guardians of the Galaxy, which were kind of like this really not as well known as most of the other characters that they had in their repertoire of movies previously. Like, you could argue that, you know, Iron Man wasn't a huge character, like, compared to characters like Spider-Man and stuff, but I feel like the Avengers as a whole were more well-known than the Guardians of the Galaxy, who were, yeah, quite a niche kind of character in that world. But the movie was so successful, so experimental, had some great new concepts, and it was like this great sci-fi superhero send-up that was really fun. And I personally believe that DC saw this and was like, oh, we have to do something slightly similar to that. And that's how Suicide Squad came to be. But this movie didn't really turn many heads, aside from introducing us to Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, who definitely seems to be the standout character amongst this world and one of DC's only successful characters. You know, if you look at Ben Affleck's Batman, it just didn't really do very well at all in the DC extended universe. Even the Superman character didn't do very well, but Harley Quinn is one that they have taken and run with totally to the hills. They really like this. Even Jared Leto as the Joker in this was really not liked at all. So it was kind of inevitable that this movie wasn't going to be very popular. Even with Will Smith as Deadshot, I don't know, this movie just didn't really resonate with a lot of people. Some people really liked it, but generally it received negative reviews. And then essentially it all comes out that James Gunn, who did direct Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, and I believe is now back directing Guardians of the Galaxy 3, was going to be directing the sequel to Suicide Squad, which was a loose sequel, but more of a reboot in some senses. Because it did feel like DC just wanted to scrap the continuity of that first movie and create something new, but did want to keep some elements of what they built there, such as Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. Of course, in the midst of this, they did release the movie Birds of Prey, which was, again, another movie that starred Harley Quinn that was kind of a spin-off of Suicide Squad. But probably the biggest miss with that film was the marketing. It was called Birds of Prey, or The Fantastic Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, or some weird title like that. It was later kind of rebranded in some markets to Harley Quinn Birds of Prey, right? Because not having Harley Quinn in the title of a movie about Harley Quinn, or front and center in that title, was probably a really bad marketing decision from them. But this movie was a little bit better received, and again, because of Harley Quinn being at the forefront and Margot Robbie's fantastic performance of that really likable and fun and unique character, the movie did much better. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, directed by James Gunn, on the other side of the comic book ballpark, was again pretty successful, and people were really liking these characters, and it kind of came out, you know, James Gunn got fired from Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and went over to Warner Brothers and DC and signed on to direct the Suicide Squad. And I feel like this is where the issue lies, because I think that people kind of see James Gunn directing it and they automatically assume that just because James Gunn is doing it, it's going to be the best movie ever and it's going to be so good and so much better than the first one. And I think going into the movie, people are looking at it already with that kind of prism in mind. And what I will say is that the new Suicide Squad movie is definitely better than the first one. I wouldn't say it's like monumentally better. I didn't even think the first one was that bad, but I guess I'm not a fan of the source material necessarily, so I don't know what I'm looking for in these kinds of movies. And yeah, James Gunn does a great job, but he also definitely tries to replicate what he did with Guardians, which seems exactly what Warner Brothers and DC wanted from this. Harley Quinn again is at the forefront, and there's a bunch of new characters, including King Shark, who, with his limited talking skills and like being the CGI kind of character, essentially was the fill-in for Groot, like really felt like the Groot character in this, and it really did feel like, yeah, he was using a lot of the tropes of the original Guardians of the Galaxy movies to kind of play on that here. Even in the first few scenes of this with the Weasel character who like looked exactly like a carbon copied Rocket Raccoon. And of course I don't blame him for making any of these decisions, and I don't think that that detracts from the movie. Like, it doesn't detract from the movie that King Shark is essentially a carbon clone of Groot from the other side, but I do think that it would have been cool to see him maybe not use a character that is so similar to Groot in that way. Casting-wise, I thought it was really good, with Idris Elba coming on, kind of replacing the Will Smith leader kind of role in a new character. And the storyline is alright. I did feel like the movie was a little bit detached in the way that Harley Quinn is separate to a lot of the main action for a lot of the movie. And it was a very, very slow start as well. I think about halfway through, I didn't feel like much had happened at all. Again, I don't think this is a bad movie by any means, but what I'm saying is that I think there's this like effect, some psychological effect where you're like, oh, James Gunn, Guardians of the Galaxy, bam, he's doing Suicide Squad, which means that that is going to be such a great movie, and I think people are definitely amping up how good this movie is compared to what it really, really is. Like, I think if you rewatch it again, and again, I don't think it's bad, but I think you'll be like, yeah, this is kind of slow, it's quite derivative, it's fairly detached, and you'll start to see some of the negatives about this film. And also, I don't know how much longer the Harley Quinn kind of character effect will last. Like, could they do another movie? Possibly. Is that character gonna get kind of old? I don't know. Is she going to be like the face of the DC movie universe for the time being? I also don't know, but she's certainly very popular and clearly is profitable for them, so I don't see why they wouldn't use her in a lot of their movies moving forward. But it also doesn't seem like DC is even necessarily doing a universe now, especially with Robert Pattinson's The Batman coming up and various other things that suggest that there's a little kind of crumbling down of what was being set up over the past decade or so, because it just didn't work for them in the way that what Marvel did worked and what Marvel is still doing work. But I do love a lot of these characters, so I would really like to see them moving forward in some way. I would love to see another shot at Justice League, and I would love to see maybe Robert Pattinson's Batman does start a new cinematic universe. I don't know. The Snyder Cut came out and changed a lot as well. Who knows? What do you think? What did you think of the Suicide Squad? Who is your favourite member? A lot of people seem to like the Ratcatcher character. Yeah, check out some of my other videos, including my Birds of Prey review and a bunch of my other TV things. I recently did a video on why The Simpsons' 700th episode was the worst episode of all time. Check that out, subscribe. I also have a Patreon, but I'll see you in the next video. See you later.
But I went to run my hand through your hair and I noticed you were attached to string. You were a puppet this whole time, you were attached to string.